everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching this video and this content. We're excited that you're taking the time to look at this. I'm Mike Neeley. I am with Equity 401k Consultants, and plan advisor over here. And I am joined today by my good friend, colleague, amazing third-party administration team in Nova 401k Associates, Mr. Thad Letzer. Thad, just take 2 seconds. Introduce yourself for, the folks that are following me. They may not know who you are.
Sure, Mike. Thanks for those kind words already. As you mentioned, my name is Thad Letzer, and I work for Nova 401k Associates. Nova 401k Associates is one of the largest independently owned third-party administration firms in the country. And at Nova, we are responsible for retirement plan design, and compliance administration. So we're glad to be here.
Awesome. So, Thad, we're going to cover, I think, a pretty thick legislative topic as briefly as we possibly can without getting too deep into the weeds. But of course, for everybody that's been familiar with everything that passed at the end of last year, of course, we're talking about Secure 2.0, the second iteration of the Secure Act that happened back in 2019. And just for everybody to kind of understand, with new legislation, big overhauls like this, especially to a large industry like the retirement plan industry and the financial industry, it takes time for the certain pieces of that legislation to get out to the public and to plan sponsors, and how it's going to work and how it's going to function. So our goal today is kind of to briefly discuss some important points, but stay tuned past this because we're going to be coming out with more content in the future that's going to cover more guidance and more things as it comes down the pipe about Secure 2.0. And so, Thad, one of the first, I think, important things that Secure 2.0 did that kind of upped everything from the first version of it in 2019 is they've extended those tax credits for businesses that are looking to start a plan. So let's dive into that a little bit. If you've got less than 50 employees and you're looking to start a plan, what does Secure 2.0 do for you from a tax credit perspective now versus the first one?
Well, right, they've expanded those tax credits. Formerly, as part of 1.0, small business looking to start a plan would be entitled of a tax credit equal to 50% of the cost to run a plan, up to a maximum of $5,000 per year for the first 3 years. What Secure 2.0 did was expand that credit from just 50% of the expenses up to 100% of the expenses. And that the way that credit is calculated is based at a rate of $250 per non-highly compensated employee, right? So previously, if I had 20 employees, I would be entitled to, that's a tax credit of $5,000. I would need 20 employees to get that $5,000 credit.
Right.
The math is still done the same way, but now I'm getting 100% up to $5,000. So, I'm getting more of my lift taken care of by this piece of legislation. In addition, though, talk about the expansion of the tax credits. The government is also now incentivizing small business owners to create a richer benefit to the employees, in that the tax credit now also applies to any employer contributions to the plan, matching contributions. The tax credit will cover up to $1,000 per eligible employee making less than 100 grand a year. I'm going to talk about all these details, right? So if I've got a group of 15 employees, likely all of whom are making less than $100,000 a year, the tax credit will cover provide a credit of up to $1,000 against the matching contributions made by the employer.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's huge, because I know you've heard this. I've heard this when we've sat down with business owners that are looking to start a plan. Sometimes there's a sticker shock, to getting a plan started, what it's going to cost.
Sure.
And, I know that we try everything we can to make sure that we're keeping those costs to a minimum, but the federal government just came in and said, hey, start the plan. We're going to help you out in every way that we can. And they did that with the first Secure Act, but now they've stepped that up. And I think that's big for creating a benefit, especially if you're in a state like here in California, where if you've got 5 or more employees, you have to have a retirement benefit in place, or you've got to put them in Cal Savers. When you and I both know, from a tax saving perspective for a business, the retirement plan is going to be that biggest tax saving vehicle that they can have. Plus, not to mention the benefits of recruiting and retaining employees and being able to provide something that can help them provide security, future security for their employees. So I think that's huge. I thought that was super important that we start off with that, because I do think there's a lot of smaller businesses and businesses that aren't aware that those credits exist for them. And especially as we go into tax season, there's going to be a lot of accountants that might not be aware either. So if you're watching this, just know that your clients have the ability now for this tax year for 2023 to get that benefit. So that's a huge one. Another one, Thad, that caught my eye in the legislation is the ability for employers to now make contributions to the Roth portion of a 401k plan, whereas in the past, it was only going into the pre-tax bucket, not the after-tax bucket. And I think this one has a lot of questions still to it, to how that's going to play out. Can you touch a little bit about that part of the legislation?
Sure. Certainly with the popularity of Roth components inside 401k plans, this one is getting a lot of attention, right? This provision is getting a lot of attention in that now employer contributions made to a plan can be made on an after-tax basis or realized to the participant on an after-tax basis, and grow in much the same way that Roth contributions grow inside qualified plans. The challenge, though, to this one, as with several other provisions in the reg, the challenge to this one is historically employers have made contributions because those represent tax favored contributions to the employer. That's a tax deductible business expense.
Right.
What the regulation hasn't been clear on, and again, all of this stuff has not been reviewed yet by the IRS or the DOL. So everybody, for as great as all these things sound, very little of it is actually actionable until the IRS and Department of Labor provides guidance on how all of these provisions should deploy.
Right.
Specific to this one, right? If I'm the employer making a $50,000 profit sharing contribution on behalf of my participants, and 3 of them prefer to take that as an after-tax contribution, or as a Roth, if you will, who recognizes that tax liability? Does the employer no longer get a tax deduction for that profit sharing contribution that he or she has made? Or will they continue to get tax deductions for those employer contributions? And then the conversion of that previously pre-tax contribution to the employee, the participant then converts that to an after-tax once they've received it.
Right.
That has yet to, be outlined. The other component to that is that contribution cannot be subject to forfeiture. So, well, how are we going to give an employer contribution that is typically subject to a vesting schedule, which has now been converted to after tax, which is not subject to forfeiture or loss? There's still a lot of guidance that's needed around that. It's a very popular provision. A lot of folks are interested in it, but it's too soon to get too excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes back to the idea that, hey, we've got this huge industry, which is the retirement plan space. You and I both know that when you're a plan sponsor, it can be incredibly complicated to navigate. Rules are always changing. Legislation is always changing. And when that happens, at the end of the day, there's more guidance that's always going to be needed on these things.
For sure.
So let's move to another one. And that is the required auto enrollment and escalation for plans. For those folks that are familiar with Cal Savers is a Roth IRA plan, but it has automatic enrollment and it does have auto escalation to it, does it not?
It does.
Right. And so then let's take that, and it's kind of the same idea with 401k, 403b, like these types of ERISA type plans, right? So now we're going to be requiring auto enrollment and auto escalation for employees that are, either coming into a new plan or that may, be newly hired employees. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, and what's kind of unique about this, and we actually saw sort of a push for new plans late last year, is, any plans in place prior to 1/1 of 23 are grandfathered, right? So they're not required to have an auto enroll provision. Plans going forward, though, are subject to the regulation. So, like you said, that will have to be a required component of the plan. Auto enrolling at a minimum of 3%, up to 10%, with an auto increase of 1% per year. Folks can still opt out. You don't have to participate in a plan, but plans do have to include that auto enroll feature as well as the auto increase.
It's interesting, I get the idea behind it, right? You have some folks that, unless they're, auto enrolled in a plan, they may not take the time to enroll themselves into the plan. And then, there's some workers who go their entire career with the company, and even as they get raises, they're not upping their contributions, right, to keep up with those things. So I think there could be some good that comes from that. I know there'll be a few upset employees usually that have to, take the time to go in and not enroll in the plan or opt to be out of the plan. But I think, more often than not, from things I've read in other studies that I've seen, auto enrollment, tends to work in getting people involved in these plans. And I can see, where the government is coming with wanting to have these type of features, mandatory when you're starting a plan, just for, future strains on resources and things of that nature.
The intent is good. The outcome will be positive. But, again, in terms of deployment, not every record keeper is prepared that, their platforms aren't all ready to operate with auto enroll, and some are better than others. So, as provisions like this become required across the board, all the service providers are going to have to be ready to deploy these provisions properly and effectively.
Right. Right. And obviously there's other stuff that's going to be coming down in 2024 from Secure 2.0. There's going to be stuff that's coming in 2025
right.
For Secure 2.0. They are, putting things in place that are going to take some time, because again, I don't think we can touch on this enough, that when you have an overhaul like this, guidance takes time. And, if you're a plan sponsor watching this and you're, looking at some of these provisions and you're hearing, well, there's all this good stuff, there's things that are there. And yes, there's a lot of great stuff, as we've mentioned. But there is going to be a lot of things that are going to take time. So, as a plan sponsor, make sure that you're working with your retirement plan team, your financial advisor, your third-party administrator, whoever's handling compliance for you. Keep an eye out for more content like this from me over here at Equity 401k Consultants. Thad and I are going to be discussing more items from this and taking deeper dives as we get more guidance. And as everything else, we can't speak to every situation in one video. We can't speak to every part of a piece of legislation in every video. So, make sure that you're if you think there is something that you need to discuss, that you're discussing it with, the proper folks that know the specifics of your plan. And that includes tax advisors too, right? That, we're talking about
Absolutely,
tax credits.
absolutely.
Make sure you're talking with your accountant that if you're going to start a retirement plan, what you're going to be entitled to and what is going to be there for you. So
Excellent.
Thad, do you have anything else that you want to add here before we cut out?
That's it. I mean, Mike, you really touched on, surrounding yourself with folks that are paying attention to the stuff on your behalf. There's a lot of moving parts. For as exciting as, some of these provisions may be, there's a lot that needs to be ironed out, not the least of which is the IRS and the DOL still providing guidance on what we should be doing with any of these provisions. So stay tuned for more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to be putting out more content, guys. Again, I'm Mike Neeley with Equity 401k Consultants. If you have questions, you have concerns, or you just want to talk about your specific plan, you can feel free to reach out to me. My contact info will be here at the end of the video, and of course, in the posts and everywhere else that we are on social media and everywhere else on the World Wide Web. So appreciate you, Thad. Thanks for taking the time to be with me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I look forward to doing more of these with you.
Thanks. See you soon.
All righty.